Hi, I'm Jet. Thanks for watching this episode of Warlore. I've seen the future. Actually, I should say as a disclaimer that I don't have any inside information and I'm not telling you that anything that's been shared with me specifically. I'm using the rumor mill to grind the wheat, baking the bread with an oven fueled by hopium. Hints of future armies are peppered throughout their role-playing games, and expansion books, and even army lists. Here's another caveat though, the reinforcements rules. These are almost sectorials in and of themselves. In terms of mechanics and design space, they're a notable addition, which makes it harder to release more sectorial sub-armies. Another caveat, this is part 1 of 2, just the human armies for now. I'll get back to you guys soon with future armies for Combined Army, Tohaa, and Yujing. I can't promise that anything I list here will actually come out. Although almost all the existing sectorials that we currently have were hinted at in backstory years before their release, there's always room for a swerve, but unless I've missed something or there's a surprising turn, here are some possible next armies for Infinity. Pan-Oceania is a multi-planetary state. It's the home to, if not the majority, at least the plurality of human population. Because organizing armies is tough, the Pan-Oceanian military-industrial complex is divided into planetary armies. Each of these divisions is fully capable of defending and patrolling its home system, as well as serving together whenever High Command requests an expeditionary force. These include the existing armies for Varuna, Zvalarema, Acontecimento, Neoterra, and finally, Earth. Earth is not that important in the grand scheme of things, but there's territory and people and things that need to be defended. Therefore, the Earth Bastion army has a complicated job. For one, they protect Pan-Oceanian territory on Earth, a fractured and diverse planet with many small nations and complex borders. Furthermore, the EBA works to secure the many colonies, settlements, and orbitals all throughout the Sol system, from the remote mining facilities on Mercury to the Acontecimento wormhole past Pluto. Pan-Oceania and Yujing together control most of Oceania, Europe, much of Asia, and half of South America. Here, their citizens live quiet, comfortable, and secure lives in carefully preserved cities. Billions more humans live in smaller, poorer countries. The broken remnants of the USA, regional powers like Nigeria. These countries fight for relevance, struggling not to be totally forgotten and sometimes vying for power on Earth. They also fight in a literal sense, over territory or politics, and border skirmishes among the smaller countries are sadly quite common. Thus, there is the need for a Pan-Oceanian peacekeeping force. The best known unit from Earth are the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre. These elite units are chosen from the best of all the military orders, and they protect Earth in general, and the Free City of Jerusalem in specific. They are hardly the only unit. Many people immigrate to or from Earth, importing and exporting rich cultural traditions. The Star Tide, the massive stellar emigration from Earth, was mostly one way though, away from Earth and onto new worlds. Pan-Oceania largely bypassed Mars during its colonization efforts, but it did assist Yujing by moving the moon Phobos into a higher orbit to ensure the safety of Martian space elevators. And when they were done, they just never left. The Earth Bastion army has had a presence in orbit around Mars for decades, and they have not been passive. More than once they've deployed to shut down illegal drone races on locales ranging from Mars to Saturn. The Phobos base is therefore always a source of contention. The Earth Bastion army also operates around Jupiter. The Jovian moons are the most heavily populated place in the solar system outside of Earth. Although every major power has settlements, Pan-Oceania is the dominant power, and the EBA is the de facto military police force. They sometimes cross paths with Yujingyu colonies, nomad stations, and even the surviving Russian colonies on Callisto. Finally, there's Saturn. All the major wormholes are relatively close to Saturn, so the sixth planet is very cosmopolitan. Pano is mostly in economic competition with the other powers, and warfare is just about unheard of. The Mars to Saturn circuit is one of the busiest trade routes in the sphere, home to an imposing monastery that greets visitors to Jupiter, so the Earth Bastion army has its hands full. If I was to guess about units in the Earth Bastion army, I'd start with the aforementioned Knights of the Holy Sepulchre, because that's the only unit that I know would be in there for sure. They protect the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. That's the church in Jerusalem covering the supposed sites of the crucifixion and the tomb of Jesus. I'd hazard a guess that Wild Bill and Joan of Arc may appear, because both of them are experienced fighters, and also specifically, both of them have spent a lot of time on the Mars to Saturn circuit. Next up, Fusiliers. They're always in there. They're on Earth, they're in space, and they are gonna be in the Earth Bastion Army. Knights of Santiago. They are members of the Naval Officer Corps, and they're dedicated breachers for space operations and boarding actions. Because the Earth Bastion Army spends so much time defending orbitals as well as Earth, the Santiago is also all but guaranteed to participate. After that, I kinda have no idea. Maybe locusts, because they're the kind of shit stirrers you'd send to Mercury or Mars to foment unrest. I'm also guessing the Squallows, maybe the Mark II, because they're kind of an everywhere tag, and Squallows specifically have a long history of being deployed to conflicts on Earth. What are their fire teams? I don't know. Would they have new units? Probably. So will we ever see the Earth Bastion Army on the tabletop? I'd say there's a chance because they are explicitly mentioned, but Pan-Oceania has quite a few sectorial armies already, so I'd probably guess that an existing army would be redone and reprinted before we see the Earth Bastion army, but I am not saying never. Haqqislam's capital is the planet Borak. Most of Borak? Great to visit, nice to inhabit, very tolerant, very hospitable. They'll body your ass in esports.
Let's go! Woo!
But the Gabqar region? Awesome to visit, awful to inhabit. It's corrupt. It's also strictly militarized, and where it's not, it is almost completely lawless. Gabqar is where the plant Nasiat is harvested. Nasiat, under the right circumstances, can be processed into silk. For more on the process, you can check out my haqqislam videos here. Silk is the foundation of Gabqar's economy, and quite important to haqqislam's place as a major power. The protections surrounding the industry are extreme, including minimal terraforming. Therefore, life is hard and the conditions are unpleasant. The only law is martial law, and that only applies in the cities. Otherwise, security is made with your fists. Al-Hajib, the elected leader of Haqqislam, appoints a military leader known as a Khan to oversee the entire region, drawn from a list of candidates provided by the military, the Sword of Allah. But the Khan's influence only goes so far. Organized crime networks cover the many low-lying mountain chains of Gabqar, and outlaw gangs make homes in tunnels and hidden valleys. The Khan works to eliminate them, but it's generally not worth the money, lives, and time it takes to root them out. If it's not the extreme heat or the criminals, it's the poison. Literal poison. Local terraforming efforts inadvertently created a parasitic hybrid fungus known as repente. It's very poisonous. Oops. It's airborne. Oops. Sometimes the winds pick up the spores in dust clouds. The Semete Valley is a dense fungal forest. It's bad. Don't go there. And if it's not toxic poison, it's the worst poison of all, inequality. Gabqar features the Nouveau Riche city of Kivakala, center of silk production and one of the most economically stratified places in the human sphere. All of Borak's 4 main regions maintain their own standing military forces, and all of them can be called upon by the unifying force of the Sword of Allah. That is, the National Army. It's not really clear, but basically, the Al-Medinat Caliphate has the Ramah Task Force. The Funduk Sultanate has the Kapukali. The Iran Jat al-Amat Shanate, kind of has the Hassassin Bahram. And the Khanate has some guys that have not been named. Which guys? Well, the most obvious are the Kum Bikers. The word sand in Turkish is kum. Turkish writers have an ancient history and are legendary fighters in classical narratives. Their unit patch features the silver fist of Alexander the Great, wings for freedom and victory, and the blade for the fighter. Kum Bikers are a diverse lot. They're usually the enforcers for Kyrgyz mafias that make their home out in the mountains. They're Mad Max-style road warriors, drug dealers, and arms merchants. Kum Biker games are turbulent folks, and it's proven easier to bribe them than to simply eliminate them. They meet up in Kum Dag, a ramshackle slum town that sprawls forever, dug in to avoid the wind. It's a mixture of mining settlement, racing club, biker bar, and factory town. The really illegal stuff happens outside the walls, which actually makes Kum Dag kind of a tourist destination. The Khan of the Gabqar can press the Kum Bikers and their leaders into service with the Sword of Allah by appealing to their history and sense of honor and probably a big box of nitro cane. The high-ranking members often actually have some military history, like the Nazarova sisters. As for other units, I'd expect the Halka units to appear. The Hulka did not survive the transition from 3rd to 4th editions of Infinity, but we're not really missing out. They only had 2 miniatures and they weren't super popular. They were essentially Ghulam who rolled into battle in armored personnel carriers. They all had the skill Mechanized Deployment, which gave them forward deployment, but they all had to deploy near other Hulka as if they just jumped off an APC. In the lore, they'd lost all their APCs fighting on Paradiso, so maybe the Hulka would return. The other guaranteed unit are the Hunzakut. The Burosho, also known as the Hunza people, are a real ethnic group that live in the northern areas of Gilgit-Baltistan in the northern reaches of Pakistan. Many Burosho from Earth ended up settling on Borak, founding the small but bustling city of Hunza. It's a prosperous place, appealing to adventure tourists while also functioning as a hub of Nasiat collection and silk production. On the tabletop, Hunzakut are strong units with high willpower and a low price. They don't have the military mindset though, so they're always irregular infiltrators. Hunzakut are also notable big game hunters. The city of Hunza is surrounded by the Bajram Balk mountain range, which is the realm of the Sakt Takdir, which is that's the Urdu word for grim fate. Sakt Takdir are dangerous mountain panthers, hunted almost to extinction due to their extreme aggression and danger they pose to local settlers. The panthers have made a comeback thanks to a concerted preservation effort, but they're still quite lethal. Only local guides are known to properly hunt them down. Maybe a special Hunzakut hunting regiment, like a big model with guard, with the panther, or even a peripheral could appear. Ghulam are in. They always are. They're also explicitly described as forming some of the militarized police regiments. If we move into speculation, then I'd propose vehicles. Yeah. So Infinity technically has vehicle rules and has had them for a while. Vehicles have pilots, suffer EM damage, and sometimes have ejector seats. Past that, we don't really know because tags and motorcycles don't count as vehicles. They could give vehicles the ability to easily transport troops, like the old 2nd edition Maghariba Guard. Vehicles could work like a cheaper, less mobile tag also, maybe vulnerable from their huge size, but more expendable than a big high-tech mecha. The Kum don't just use motorcycles, they also make roadsters. I'd love to see 2 guys in a car on a battlefield in Infinity. Maybe they've got a big gun, but they're impetuous, irregular, they're inconvenient, and they've got bad aim. My idea might be a vehicle with movement 210 or something. You might go slow if you rev down to do a drive-by, but you're super fast if you're speeding up. I would love to see guys with the mountain terrain skill that aren't part of Svalarema or Winterfor. What about a really bad day Lami type model? Just some mountain pirate guy who has nothing but a chain colt, mountain terrain training, and a dream. Maybe some of those nouveau riche bastards in Kivakala could have their own unit, or at least we could get a miniature as a high-value target. They've got their own specialized corporate security, so I could envision a kind of militarized police force that could be pressed into service. Speaking of, there is a huge mercenary market in the town of Kumdag, and that makes it very likely that mercenary units would appear. There's the usual, bounty hunters, brawlers, rem racers, beast hunters, and it would make sense for all of them to show up. Will we actually see the Gabqar Khanate? I think so. I've heard scuttlebutt that they want to do Gabqar, that all the unit stats are designed and ready to go, but they're not sure if they should, and there are understandable issues in the way. For one, they could also just redo Kapukalki, an existing line of models that would benefit and deserve it. Kapukalki is already sort of back, with some new profiles and sculpts showing up as part of the reinforcement update, and Kapukalki already has existing fans, unlike Gabqar. For 2, it might be tough to support. One of the reasons that army lines are discontinued is just capacity. There's only so many models of Stork and Shell, so many things to keep on shelves, and I think that's one of the reasons that they've moved towards those larger army boxes in the booster packs. Gabqar would mean lots of new, probably expensive motorcycles and related models, and I'm not sure what the price point would be like. Still, I don't know what's next for haqqislam, but I feel good saying that we'll see Gabqar Khanate someday. So there are 2 sectorials I think could appear in the future for O-12. Actually, there's a bunch. You could have one for each bureau, yeah, but not all of them are really filled with tactical enforcers. In general, if you want to enforce something, you get the guys inside Bureau Aegis to do it. It's their job. If there's a hostage crisis, the American government very rarely deploys an assault team from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. For all the bureaus aside from Bureau Aegis, I could see it. There are specialized sections within some of them that could apply. Section Métis is a part of Bureau Agni, and they're dedicated to developing, testing, and cataloging all of the next generation technologies of the human sphere. For a super high-tech sectorial, yeah, we could see something like that. A lot of people have asked for a Bureau Tot sectorial, one that involves Aleph. After all, Aleph is overseen by Bureau Tot, but there's basically nothing in Tot that seems military grade. They'd be requisitioning almost all of their gear and guys from Bureau Aegis or Aleph's SSS anyway. I suppose if you want, there's nothing saying you can't paint and retheme your models to be like a Bureau Tot oversight group though. One smaller option that I was thinking about that probably would not appear in this game is the Concilium Planetary Defense Force, or CPDF. They're depicted as being motivated and very well equipped, but not trained particularly well. The CPDF never really expected a ground invasion on Concilium, even though that was their whole point. They're supposed to be a home guard for the planet Concilium Prima. So, just a random idea, the CPDF's thing could be a whole bunch of undercosted, well-equipped troops that suffer from being irregular. They have good fundamentals, but lack the cohesive training needed for special operations skirmishes. Maybe they don't have good fire teams, or maybe they've only got duos or harries or something. So that's mostly a pipe dream. Here's my real theory. Bureau Aegis has two main sections. Section Spatha, also known as Sword 4, and that's the best known one. They're the SWAT guys, the Tactical Enforcement Branch. When you play as O-12, you're playing as these guys, an international task force. You're playing Team Rainbow from Rainbow Six, if they also controlled the planet and ran the internet. The other option is Section Statera, the Scales of Justice, the Courts, the Bean Counters, the Lawyers. Section Statera is much more the police. There are a few units that seem very orientated towards civilian-ish law enforcement already. Just take a look at the unit badges and their design. Alpha Unit are investigators and can work like a case manager. Team Sirius are long-haul solo ops, which was why they have that robot dog. I guess you could have lawkeepers in there because they're pretty cool. Gangbusters, tailor-made for this sort of army. They're all about undercover operations. It's perfect. And then you've got roadbots. Is that anything? Yeah, that roster's a little light. I actually like the idea, and if you look at the unit badges, I think that it's got legs. It just doesn't have enough legs. What I described actually has light infantry, skirmishers, lieutenant options, and specialists, but it's lacking in bodies, heavier units, and any sort of fire team options. Sadly, this one I think it's a bit harder to do. There's potential for all sorts of future sectorials for O-12, but I don't know if there's enough need or design space. I bet that there's a lot of O-12 players out there who have things they'd like to see that I didn't think of, so I'm all ears if there's a sectorial on your wish list. Aleph players are spoiled for choice. Operations is cool. Steel Phalanx is cool. They're both really cool. I bought them because they were cool, and not because I kept losing while playing Yujing in late 2nd edition. Aleph is mostly seen by people as a tool, managing daily operations that affect every law-abiding citizen in the human sphere. These non-combat aspects of Aleph actually help with everything from financial transactions, to commercial reporting, to journalistic oversight, educational initiatives, health, sanitation, much, much more. But we think about the AI as a faction in a tabletop miniatures game because this is about Infinity, which is a tabletop war game with little miniatures. So you're thinking about the military operations that are very much part of Aleph's remit. All of their militarized enforcement falls under the Special Situations section, or SSS or SSS. Within that, there are 3 smaller groups. There's the Operations subsection, which works with human elements to enforce regulatory activity. They monitor quantronic communications, financial security, and they work with O-12 as an arm of reporting and public broadcasting. Then there's the Assault subsection, the Steel Phalanx that answers only to Aleph, created to defend the sphere against the combined army. But there's a third, far less flashy element, the Support subsection. The Support subsection is not filled with Therakites or Asura. It's got managers, administrators, robots, and bureaucrats. Their key function, though, is that of an emergency service. Working with state-of-the-art remotes and equipment, the Support subsection is designed to quickly get anywhere at any time and perform whatever duties they need of it. Support teams were trained to operate independently or small swarms and to deal with medical crises, serious accidents and events, support military units or other subsections, and work as trauma docs and field surgeons. Crews from the support section are often asked to investigate and rescue crews from spaceship incidents, for example, from colonies where there has been some form of disaster, or from a far-flung mining outpost. They're more than just a glorified emergency service, though, because the support subsection's big function is careful analysis. They relay info in real time while performing equipment drops, troop deployments, and quick evacuations. So yeah, they're the logistics, they're the behind-the-scenes people. The support subsection had legal power and some militarized elements, but they weren't really on the line of fire like the other two subsections. The most famous element of the support subsection was the Optimates, an extreme rescue team made up of post-human celebrities like Maximus. The only other exciting thing I can think of is PRED, P-R-E-D. That's the Psychosanitary Risks Evaluation Department. PRED exists to evaluate all aspects as they are mentally formed and determine whether or not the fabricated consciousness is stable or wholly broken or something in between. Should an aspect of Aleph be determined unfit for existence thanks to some flaw, they can be wiped clean and reset to an earlier state, re-undergoing psychogenesis until the proper mental matrix is established. Basically, they oversee the creation of Aleph aspects and make sure they're normal enough to be given a body and a job. Support members were generally not used as boots on the ground. Their job was support. It's in their name. Mostly for OSS, the operations subsection whose actions were mostly of a police nature and of moderate size and impact. But that changed when the Combined Army showed up years ago. Operations suddenly had to go from police support to military support, from having like guys with ties to guys with size, like the ninja sword. And alongside operations, support subsection's job was mostly logistics, but it was changing. Their role had always been providing the aforementioned behind-the-scenes assistance, supply lines, fire support, getting people where they need to go, analyses, recommendations. Over time, though, that expanded to being deployed as quick reaction forces. The SSS as a whole is specialized and powerful and small, and support was too small to adequately arrive in time. The support subsection requested an expansion, and they were given it, but it was not enough. O-12 laws and nomad lobbyists both ensure that the SSS has to remain small, and their military remit was narrow. The bigger support got, the smaller the other two would get. Support put all of its planning experience to the test, creating an institution to optimize its limited resources. This was Program Ankh, which is the Hindi word for number. Small, rapid reaction groups in areas of interest, equidistant from multiple hotspots. They could provide direct tactical support, assisting units that would already be engaged with the enemy. Their teams would be small but pack a mighty punch. It could be as small as a single dropship or landing pod with a few operatives, always supported by compact drones that could just really be stuffed in there. The robotic units they developed would keep the OSS tradition of using names from ancient Indian mythology, although they usually still have a number representing the military unit that deploys them. Speaking of units for the support subsection, you've got Unit 17, the Statera. These guys are obsessive hunters and planners. From the moment their consciousness is spun up, they are training to hunt. Even before their bodies are fabricated in ectogenesis, Statera are training to hunt. When they get assigned to a mission, they spend as much time as possible practicing their hunt as they can before deployments. They read every single map, they go over terrain, they go over escape routes, and they memorize even the gait and movement patterns of their targets. Statera are not my kind of guy, but they get results. Their weapons are an extension of their body. You can't throw smoke, they'll know where you are based on the terrain. You can't run fast, they're leading their shots. And they're almost certainly not fun at parties. There's Unit 21, Eclipse. They're responsible for transorbital insertion and extraction using shuttles. Sometimes unarmed dropships, sometimes armed landing craft, and sometimes very heavily armed spacecraft. Unit 31, Eclipse, by contrast, is planetary transport operations. They have subgroups as well, Battis, Timetis, and Chontis. Ankh has Unit 48, the Artalis multi-purpose team. Rapid response troops equipped with decent gear and outstanding training. Rumor is that the Artalis troopers are actually copied from post-human Q backups. This would be legally dubious, but extremely effective as they come pre-trained in CASEVAC, recovery, emergency repairs, and more. Artalis have the number 48. Fun fact, 48 in Chinese implies success. Any 3-digit numbers that end with 48 sound like wealthy for X lifetimes. For example, 748 is 778, which sounds like 778, which means wealthy for 7 lifetimes. Yujing Intelligence believes that this is intentional. I just think it's fun. The vibe of Artalis units are unusual among support subsection and Project Ankh personnel. They're extremely cynical and have a certain sang-froid personality. Artalis fellas have this weird habit of pacing around, showing eagerness and anticipation for battles, even if the mission they're being sent into is usually hopeless, with triple S troops already on the ground and losing. And yet, they still love it. They crave it. They're addicted to winning. They're driven. For Artalis units, being sent on a hopeless mission is the best time of the week. Unit 59, Unsath. They're the rickshaw takbots, named after a race of half-human, half-bear creatures from between the stars. They're basically souped-up Dakini takbots, upgraded with huge numbers of packages to improve their performance. The Unit 89. Unit 89, the rarely seen Navasi, responsible for the maintenance of robotic mobile artillery units. The list goes on, with countless more units being developed for support subsection and Project Ankh. There's the Dawan takbots, close combat models based on Dakinis, specialized Sophateks who train for rapid response and rescue operations. I need not list more. So, if support subsection, or its much more catchy name, Project Ankh, ever gets made into a sectorial, what would it consist of? Well, first of all the stuff I just said. That's why I said it. The Dawan, Artalis, Statera, Sophateks, rickshaw takbots, and all the existing support stuff like remotes and rebots, and netrods. The Optimates are celebrity post-humans, and they're gonna be in there, so I guess we'd see Maximus and probably Dart as well. I'm guessing they'd add one more Optimati for measure. If it's up to me, we might get some crazy stuff with post-humans. Here's an idea. There's a guy with G-Jumper that has 2 bodies, one that's a tag and one that's a funny little guy. I'm not saying that they would also get access to the current post-human proxies, more like us getting a second unit that has G-Jumper. Apsara Cyber Dancers might be in. They would function as remote pilot upgrades to a force that's already very heavily invested in robotic drones. Maybe we get a REM driver profile that gives them some weird new stuff, like BS attack -6, because you're just shooting so many bullets, or a BTS of like 12. Give them triangulated fire. What about mine dispensers, to pair with the idea of a logistics and artillery heavy sectorial? I'm thinking esoteric things, weird things for me, like me. I think that a group based around the support subsection might have someone from Pred as well. Maybe the Thyreos, since they're kind of like rejected devas who are too violent. I could see other aspects who are being evaluated for full-time service, or being assessed after some violent action. Characters like Nasai Alki come to mind, but I'm sure we'd see some new ones. All the focus on logistics makes me think we'd get plenty of stuff with baggage. Hell, we might get something with baggage on an unusual profile or weird size. Right now all the units I listed are pretty good, so for fireteams the rickshaw takbot would be a great fireteam core candidate. They're missing a few things. We would need at least one strong hacker, and any Project Ankh sectorial would probably need some models with forward observer as well. So, will we see them? I'm a broken record, but I think the reason that Corvus Belli is avoiding more sectorials is production. It's hard to support a lot of products and a lot of factions. There are, at this moment, 35 sectorials. Not all of them are in production, but it's still a ton of sub-factions to try and make models for. In Warhammer 40k, there's a lot of little upgrades and custom things for Space Marines, but come on, those are Space Marines. Even if making the models and getting them on shelves was not an issue, it's not easy to balance 35 armies and keep people happy. A third reason why these are hard to put out is the number of units expected in a sectorial. Follow me with this one. Way back in 2009, Corvus Belli put out Human Sphere, which added rules for sectorials and fireteams. The Neo-Terran Capitoline army had just 9 units it could take, not including the standard complement of remotes and support units. 9! Auxilias, Fusiliers, Hexas, Aquila Guard, Swiss Guard, 2 tags with the Ulan and the Squallows, the Garuda and the Deva from Aleph. 9. Just 9 options, basically. Now look at current NCA. In N4, NCA is ballooned up to 23 units, including a bunch of characters, but also Black Friars, Neoterran Bolts, CSUs, Locusts, and Orcs. Expectations for flexibility are much higher. Here's another example. When Cosmoflot came out in 2022, they had like 25 profiles, excluding support options like the generic Doctor, Engineer, War Corps, stuff like that. 25! That's almost triple that of NCA when it was first released. Many were existing models that you could already buy, but still, 25. If you were to make support subsection into a sectorial, therefore, I think that expectations would be closer to contemporary sectorials. Like, would you play a new army for your faction if it had like 7 total units, plus some support options? We could squeeze in a few more by adding guest units from other armies, troopers, characters, but, would you be satisfied with a sectorial made up of just 9 distinct units? I don't know. I suspect many would find it boring, I bet some people would like it, and I would love to hear your opinions. Leave a comment because I want to hear what my watchers think. This is the end of the video, at least this video. I have a second one coming extremely soon, this time focusing on more future armies for Yujing, but I think that people might enjoy a reasonably long video instead of an obscenely long one. Thanks a lot to all of my patrons, who probably are the only reason I did this. Yes, sorry this video was supposed to come out in the spring. Oops, it did not. So thanks to them. You can see them here, and thank all of you so sincerely for watching. Bye-bye.